Hi all, welcome to a new session of Azure Data Factory, and we are going to continue in the source tab of copy data activity. And in today's session we are going to look at additional columns option of source tab of copy data activity. So let me open my Azure portal. I'm going into my resource group, and let me open my data factory studio first. And in the meantime, I'm also going to take a look at the data that we are going to use. So in this particular session, we are going to use students data. So let me remove the sync. We don't need that. Cool. Now our data is same as session 9. So let me go to session 9 and open the data set. Fine. So if you see, we divided our data into two separate partitions. One partition was on stream column, and after that those partitions were again partitioned into the batches. Now the additional columns features that we are going to discuss today helps us in expanding our knowledge of the data that we are copying. So let me open the pipeline that we are using for our learning, and I'm going to click on our copy data activity in the source. And if you see, we had like skip line count. Let me just remove it, we don't need it anymore. And I'm going to click on additional columns. Okay, so let's take a look at what are the different options that we get in additional columns. So we get certain default variables. So dollar file path gives you the file path of the file from which you are getting the data in the sync. Okay, similarly you have column. So in this case, column is again a special variable where you can define a column that you want to duplicate. So for example, if I say id should be repeated one more time with some different column name, I can use this dollar column feature. Okay, then we have custom where you can give any default value or expression, and there is also a file name option. Okay, so let me create all these three additional columns. So the first additional column will be file name. So I'm going to say file name, then I'm going to say from which file path the data is coming, so it is going to be the file path. Then I'm going to use the column id. Okay, so I'm going to say this, and I'm going to use id. So let me just type it. You get the drop down when you have the schema already inferred, but in this case there is no schema already inferred, so I'm just typing the name of the column that I want to get. And remember, you have to use a different column name, so you cannot write id and give the same name in the destination column. So I'm saying id duplicate, and then you can have like one more I'm adding, and I'm saying constant. I'm going to say data set, and I'm going to say custom, and I'm going to say student. Okay, mostly this is, I would say, in the most of the scenarios you will use first three, and out of those also most of the time you use file path and file name. and rest other things are very rarely used. So I'm showing you all four. There is also one, I think, dynamic content. Let me just create that also if that is possible. So let me use dynamic column value. I'm going to say dynamic content. So I'm going to say, let's suppose I'm using system variables, and I'm going to use data factory name. Okay, so this is going to be the value. Fine. So if I go ahead and run it, but before running that, we also have to make changes in our data set. So I'm going to say we are going to use our students container. Similarly, for the sync, I'm going to say I want one file. This will be easier for us to understand. And in the data set, I'm changing from data to students. Okay, now let me go back, and everything is looking good. Everything is ready. So before running the pipeline, let me just go over the different additional column options that we have. File path will give you the folder path where the file is located. File name, sorry, this is going to be file name. So file name is going to give you the name of the file from which the data is being copied. File path is going to give you the file from which the data the path of the file from which the data is being copied. Column, if you want to duplicate something from the existing data set. Custom data set, if you want to hard code some values like a constant. And there are dynamic options as well. So these are the five types that you can use in your additional columns. Now we have our data set ready. Let me use this for our input. So I'm going to use source file name, source file path, and source file name. I'm going to click on this. I want file name. Fine. Let me go back to my sync and check everything looks good. I'm going to say merge file. Yeah, everything is looking good. Fine. Now let me validate if everything is looking okay. Yes. And right now, if you see, we have science, commerce, and arts. And if you go into students, you have only one directory. If I run the pipeline in debug mode, I want everything from source. I want every file of .csv extension. I want it into sync directory, and I want into full data set .csv file name. So let me click on OK. Now the copy has started. We have to wait for a couple of seconds. Okay, so file copy has succeeded. Before we go into sync, let's see whether the file was able to copy anything or not. So I think, let me go and check sync. Okay, so we have full data set. Let me see, and okay, there is nothing coming. Fine. Let me see why. Everything is looking good. I think we made some mistake in our configuration of copy data activity. So source file path, source file name. We have okay, everything is looking good. Source column, we don't need that. Sync file path, sync file name. Open. Okay, students. Everything is looking good. Let me go and restart the pipeline. Source file path is source. Everything and full data.csv. Okay. Now if you see, the data has been copied. I don't know what happened last time, why it didn't get copied, but I think looking at the data monitoring section of the pipeline, it looks like the data has been copied. Now let's see the output. So we had 351 data read bytes, data written to 107, files read 11, file written 1. Yep, this time the data has been successfully copied into sync. Fine, let me refresh it. Let me go to sync, and here if you see the size, yeah, it's around 2 kilobytes. So this is the correct data. Now if you click on edit, and if you see, you have id, student, file name, and there is a file path. And if you look at the file path, it is giving you the file path from where this particular record has been copied, and before that you see the file name is coming. So this is the complete path of that particular file inside the directory, and this is the file name, and this one is the constant. This is again this one is the duplicate. That means the id duplicate. This is the constant that we have just named like dataset name, and in the dynamic column value, it has been triggered by the data factory adf demo rishabh. So this is how you can use the additional column feature to enhance the readability or uses or understanding of your dataset. Most of the time you use this and this. So file path and file name are the most commonly used additional columns when you are pulling the data using ADF. So in order to recap, let me again just go back to where we started. So we were looking at additional column options. We have total 5 different options: file name, file path, and column. These are the unique variables that are provided by the data factory inbuilt. File name and file path are going to give you the name of the file and the path of that file from which the data row has been copied, and then you have the column from which you duplicate the column from an existing data set. Remember, if you use enable partition discovery and if you try to use that partition column name into your dollar column option, it will not allow. So suppose if you say I want to duplicate stream, so that won't come, that will be not allowed. So you have to use enable partition discovery to get that. Without that you will not be able to get the partition columns into this dollar column option. Custom, again, you can hard code any value, you can use it like constant, and then data factory is again a dynamic variable that is giving you the option to identify from which data factory this particular data set has been created. So this is like more like rarely used option in our copy activity. We never go into such a detail, but still it's good to know because it comes handy whenever you get a situation where you are having multiple files and you want to track the data row from which file it has come, what is the file name, what is the file path, in order to debug. So then it is very helpful. So I hope you like this session. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we will continue in the next session in the sync tab. So we will go in the sync in detail and see what are the options data factory provides us for our use. Thank you so much and see you.